Hello and welcome back to Rugby Today. This is the stretch of the season where the rugby stops being theoretical and starts being personal. Derby round in the United Rugby Championship, a loaded Gallagher Premiership slate, and pressure building everywhere you look across the rugby landscape. These are the weeks that expose habits, reward discipline, and punish teams that lose control of the big moments. We will break down the key derbies coming up and what actually matters in those matches. How this weekend fits into the bigger picture across the game is something we'll also have a little look at. And if you are watching from the United States, every minute of the URC, Gallagher Premiership, Top 14 and Japan League 1 is now live on FloRugby, so you won't miss any of the action. Derby season is of course that point in the calendar where we can start looking at what the theories are and what they're going to be down the season. Teams are looking to build, of course, and this weekend is what exposes exactly where they are in those journeys. Round 7 of the United Rugby Championship lands right in that space of teams that are looking both long-term and short-term. It's not a clean round by any matter, it's not really a forgiving one, and it's packed with local derbies that come with plenty of history, emotion, and very little margin for error. Add in that full slate of Gallagher Premiership matches heading into the festive period, and this feels like one of those weekends that quietly defines what the next 6 to 8 weeks are going to look like for these teams, both in the league and in the European competitions. So let's work through it properly because there is a lot going on here, of course. Starting in Wales, because Cardiff vs Scarlets at the Arms Park is always one of those fixtures that feels louder than the league table perhaps suggests. Scarlets have had the edge in recent seasons in this matchup. 4 wins from the last 5 meetings, including a 25-19 win over Cardiff earlier this season. That matters because this rivalry has been tilted as a way for a while, but the context around Cardiff is quite different now. Cardiff are second in the URC table at the moment. Only the Stormers sit above them, and the key shift is not just the results, it's the control. Cardiff are no longer hanging around in games hoping something breaks their way. They are dictating tempo, managing territory, and playing with a clarity that has been missing for several seasons. So a huge boost for the Welsh capital side. Callum Sheedy has brought plenty of calm and organisation to the backline. The attack looks deliberate rather than frantic. The outside backs are running lines with purpose, not just waiting for broken play. And of course, the Arms Park has quietly become a proper home advantage again with a winning run that stretches all the way back to March. That matters in Derby rugby because crowds' energy turns small moments into pressure very quickly for both teams and match officials. One penalty becomes a kick to the corner, one defensive stand becomes plenty more belief in a side. The Scarlets, though, will not care about any of that. Derby games are where form goes out the window, and Scarlets arrive with a reminder that they can be when everything clicks. Their 23-0 win over Glasgow was built on physicality, line speed, and a pack that finally looked properly confrontational. And they kind of carry that into Europe against Bristol and UBB. That was a big statement win, and it was one of those performances that does travel across the Derby matches. So this game will not be decided by who looks best on paper, it will be decided by discipline and emotional control. Cardiff win if they stay patient in this one, manage the game and avoid handing Scarlets any easy entries. The Scarlets win this if they turn into absolute chaos and force Cardiff to chase moments. In Welsh derbies, the teams that keep its head usually win this one. So, really contrasting styles. From Wales to Italy and the Derby d'Italia between Benetton and Zebre. This fixture always brings attention, partially because of the rivalry, partially because of the contrast in styles. Benetton have dominated historically, especially in Treviso, where their depth and game management usually separate these two sides. Zebre started this season with 2 early wins, which felt significant at the time because it did speak to a belief inside the group that has continued from last season. That belief is what they need to rediscover here. Derby rugby rewards teams that stay connected and stubborn more so than even just regular fixtures. Zebre have to disrupt early, slow the breakdown, stay disciplined, make Benetton work for territory. If Benetton settle into their rhythm, control the kicking exchanges in particular, and get front foot ball, this becomes very difficult very quickly. Pressure versus patience is the storyline here, and whichever side blinks first will feel it. Ireland give us a trio of fixtures that set sort of test the ambition in very different ways for the four provinces. The headline act is, of course, Leinster versus Ulster in Dublin, and this one arrives with plenty of layers to dig into. Leinster have steadied after a very sluggish start to the season. 4 wins on the bounce, including a clean Champions Cup block, has calmed things down a bit in Dublin. But they still do not quite feel completely fluent. Discipline has been an issue, and they have left plenty of points on the pitch in recent weeks. That does create a bit of opportunity. James Ryan's 100th appearance adds a bit of emotional weight for Leinster, and they do normally respond to those moments with a bit more physical intent. The question here is execution. When Leinster turn pressure into points, they absolutely suffocate teams. When they don't, they leave the door open, and that's been their undoing so far this season. Ulster arrived believing those doors do exist. 4 wins from 5 in the URC, big results against South African opposition, and a squad that looks energised rather than burdened by that pressure. Angus Bell makes his first start. Stuart McCluskey is back from injury, and there is genuine try-scoring form out wide for Richie Murphy's side. Ulster have won in Dublin before, of course. Doing it again requires plenty of discipline at the breakdown this time, accuracy in defence, and ruthlessness in the red zone. Leinster will give them chances. Ulster cannot afford to waste them. If they do, Leinster will just suffocate them. The other Irish provinces face very different tests, of course, but they aren't really any less demanding ones. Munster head to the Ospreys in one of those fixtures coaches quietly worry about. Munster's late collapse against the Stormers a few weeks ago, surrendering a 21-6 lead, still lingers. It exposed the very issue Clayton McMillan has spoken about since arriving, raising the floor of this side. Big European nights lift you emotionally. Wet December league trips test your habits, so McMillan will be very interested in how his Chargers respond. The Ospreys have struggled for league traction themselves, but they are physical, stubborn, and capable of dragging teams into uncomfortable battles, as we've seen throughout the season. Munster win this if they can stay patient, keep their discipline, and trust their system. If they force passes or chase moments, the Ospreys will happily turn this into a grind of a match. Connacht are also away this week to the Dragons, and they kind of carry a bit of a similar warning in this one. Dragons are still searching for a league win, but they have shown enough fight to punish complacency. Connacht's season has been marked by inconsistency. When they start well, they tend to control games. When they drift, momentum turns quickly, albeit they were 21-0 up against Ospreys and somehow lost that. This match is about foundations. Start fast, control territory, and grind it out. Drift early and you invite trouble if you're Connacht. South Africa once again delivers the most visceral derby energy of the weekend, as it so often does. The Stormers versus Lions in Cape Town sees the Stormers chasing a 9th consecutive victory this season. But injuries reshape the narrative somewhat. Sasha Feinberg-Ngobazulu is sidelined, as is Ruan Nel and Damien Willemse, which reshapes the Stormers somewhat, with Yuri Matias stepping back into the number 10 shirt. That shift tends to mean the Stormers are likely to play a bit more of a structured territory first game, which they can of course execute extremely well, in particular at home. The Lions will arrive in Cape Town knowing that if they kick loosely or exit poorly, the Stormers will punish them, so they need to keep their composure in this one. The same goes for the Stormers, who know they'll need to be very accurate against this Lions side. Up in Durban, the Sharks versus the Bulls is perhaps derby rugby in its purest form. The Bulls arrive under plenty of pressure, and that tends to sharpen the intent of teams. So expect plenty of physical confrontation early. The Bulls' identity is pretty clear this season under Johan Ackermann. They want to be a set piece first and kick first team. So that's something the Sharks will need to be aware of. The Sharks do sit in 14th, which tells its own story. The talent is obvious in the squad. The consistency has not been there, however. Home support will be significant at a sold-out Shark tank, but the Sharks will have to front up physically early against the Bulls, because if they lose that set-piece battle, it's going to be a very, very long day, because the Bulls have the potential to suffocate them. So Sia Khaleesi in particular would be very important here. Going back north, Scotland round out the action with the 1872 Cup at Hampden. And of course, this fixture never needs selling. It is more about pride, history and momentum wrapped into one than just about any fixture. Glasgow has owned this rivalry recently and arrived buoyed by a big statement win over Toulouse. Edinburgh, conversely, are desperate to respond and reclaim the trophy. With the aggregate format, discipline and game management mattered just as much as the result in the first match. One yellow card, one lapse, one poor decision, and you are chasing the tie rather than shaping it. Beyond the fixtures, of course, the wider rugby picture continues to shift, in particular with the tackle height debate that continues to rage. Players are accepting responsibility for safety, but frustration does remain around the consistency of how this is implemented. Grey areas undermine trust, and the game still needs significant alignment between safety, interpretation, and clarity from the match officials right down to coaches and players. On the transfer front, the market is accelerating with the postponed R360 project, and that has unlocked plenty of negotiations. The 2027 World Cup sharpens eligibility decisions for players. Clubs are of course leaning into all of this, and recruitment has been off the charts. In Wales, the tone is a bit more serious, with Jack Morgan and Dowie Lake heading to Gloucester, which is not just a big Premiership story, it's a bit of a warning sign for Welsh rugby at a time when uncertainty already dominates planning. Players are looking for stability, and when Wales have now lost 2 captains to one club in the Premiership. On the transfer front, things have also been accelerating, with the postponed R360 in particular blowing things open, with the likes of Dowie Lake and Jack Morgan leading the charge on the transfer front. The 2 Welsh skippers have signed for Premiership side Gloucester, which is a major blow for the Ospreys as they fight for the survival, but of course a massive boost for George Skivington's side. Hasn't all been good news for Gloucester, however, with Thomas Williams leaving the Welsh contingent in Gloucester, and he looks to be joining Saracens from next season. In the Southern Hemisphere, NRL star Zach Lomax looks set to join the Western Force, which would be a huge coup for the Super Rugby franchise and for the Wallabies ahead of the 2027 Rugby World Cup. So there's plenty of action on the transfer front. In terms of all of the action this weekend, as we touched on at the start of the video, this will all be live and exclusively on FloRugby for US rugby fans. So make sure you check out our subscription packages. And if you enjoyed this very quick and brief rundown of what is going on in professional rugby today, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for our regular Rugby Today videos and Rugby Roundup videos. So thanks again for checking in on the video, and we hope you enjoyed it.